Hello, my lovely anatomists and physiologists. Welcome back. We are focusing this time around on that sympathetic nervous system specifically. Now, remember, as we talk through the sympathetic and the parasympathetic divisions, we are paying attention to 4 important pieces of information. So we're paying attention to the functions of each division, the organization of each division, the neurotransmitters, and the receptors. And so what I super love to do when I have a lot of information and I need to do a comparison and I need to organize it is to make a table. So what we see here are 3 columns, and we have a total of 5 rows. So the first column is just those details that we need to know. So I have labeled each row as either function, organization, neurotransmitter, or receptor. And then I actually have the first row of that first column blank. And then when I get into the heading of my second column, it's the sympathetic division, and the heading of my third column is parasympathetic division. And so let's start here by filling in some details for function for the sympathetic division. So when we talk about the sympathetic division, a lot of times we like to use the phrasing, we like to use the phrasing fight, flight, right, run away. And I think it's important that we mention also freeze. So these are the ways that our bodies are, at the core level responding to stress, whether that is an environmental stress, such as a bear, right? Or a modern stress, such as my paycheck was short and I don't have enough money for food this month, or I have an anatomy physiology test coming up and I'm feeling very overwhelmed and panicky about that, right? Or anything along those lines. When we talk about gearing up the body for these kind of stressful situations, we should think about we're activating the body, right? And we've said in this course, in this context, body's talking about your skeletal muscle, your bone, your skin. So we're really getting that part of our body geared up and ready to go. And so what we're going to see happening here is we're going to get an increase of heart rate. We're going to get an increase of blood pressure. We're going to get an increase of muscle tone because we're really getting that skeletal muscle ready to respond. We're going to have an increase in mental alertness. So we're really getting ready to make decisions and be very focused. We're going to increase the pupil diameter, which is going to be important in making sure, we're getting our maximum ability to see what's going on. We're going to increase our sweat production, because if we're getting ready to do a lot of skeletal muscle activity, all of those contractions are going to generate heat, and we need to be able to cool the body down. We're going to increase our respirations so that we can get lots of oxygen moving through the blood. Of course, the heart rate has increased, blood pressure has increased, so that blood is flowing to those skeletal muscles in order to allow for production of ATP at those muscles. We're going to increase our blood flow, specifically to skeletal muscle. But we're going to decrease a couple of things. So we are going to decrease 2 major things. One is going to be digestive system. we don't want our blood flowing to our stomach, small and large intestine, focusing on coordinating the digestion and absorption of nutrients, because we want that blood instead being funneled to our extremities so we can fight, we can flight, we can freeze, right? And so we're reducing our blood flow, and as a result, we're reducing the activities in our digestive system, right? And then the other major kind of decrease would be energy reserves. And what this means is we're pulling it out of the reserve, right? So what we're going to do, we could say instead, release fatty acids. So you could say instead, we're going to increase the activity of the adipocytes, the fat storage cells, to break down triglycerides and release those fatty acids into the bloodstream. This is our kind of reserve backup energy source. So if we're getting ready to do like a whole bunch of muscle contraction as we fight, fly, run away, or freeze, we need to make sure that we're getting as much ATP fuel as possible to these cells. Okay. Let's focus next on that piece called organization, And so what we're going to see with the sympathetic nervous system, I'm going to do a little drawing to the side here. So I'm going to draw like my brain stem. I'm going to make it sort of look like two large parentheses. And then, so, oh, you know what, y'all? It's going to look a little bit like an ice cream cone, except I'm not going to close off the top of the cone. The ice cream part, I'm not going to close off the top of the ice cream or the bottom of the ice cream. And then let's make the cone part like something like this. And so let's label up here, this is our brain stem, which remember is your midbrain, your pons, and your medulla oblongata. And then I'm going to label the cone part my spinal cord. And we're doing this because sympathetic nervous system is made up of nerves. And so we either have nerves coming off of the brain or coming off of the spinal cord. And specifically what we're going to see is in the region T1 to L2, we're going to have our nerves coming off. So the sympathetic nervous system can also be referred to as the thoracolumbar system, because the neurons are coming off of the thoracic and lumbar region. So again, we're T1 to L2. And what we're going to see is we're going to have two sets of neurons that are going to be key to this conversation. So we're going to have what's called the preganglionic neuron, is going to have its cell body in the lateral gray horn. Of the thoracolumbar region between T1 to L2. And then we're going to have a ganglionic neuron, which is going to have its cell body actually in the ganglion. Ganglia is the plural form, so I'm going to go ahead and make that be plural. The ganglionic neuron can be sometimes referred to as the postganglionic neuron, so you might see that as well. So that might help you to sort of understand that a little bit better in your reading. All right, so let's use red. Let's use the color red to represent our preganglionic neuron. And so what I actually do here is draw a multipolar motor neuron, and I'm just going to simplify it by putting the cell body in that region T1 to L2. And I'm just doing a circle with the nucleus in the middle to represent that. And then I'm going to draw my axon, and I'm making it short. And I'm going to show my synaptic knobs here. So this is my preganglionic neuron. It's located, remember, T1 to L2, and we're going to classify this as a short fiber. And fiber here is another way of talking about either the nerve or the axon. And so these neurons are very short. And what it's going to do is synapse onto our ganglionic neuron, which I'm going to make that one be in black. So right here, I'm going to draw another cell body right at that synapse, and I'm just doing a circle just to simplify. And then I'm going to draw a really long axon here. And so this one is my ganglionic neuron. Is located in the ganglia, and we're going to talk more about that in just a little bit. And then we're going to see it has a long fiber. And so what we're going to see also is that the ganglionic neuron is going to synapse at the effector. And so my effectors are going to be, remember, cardiac muscle. Okay, actually, let's erase that here. No, that's right. Never mind. Cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, glands, and adipose tissue, right? Okay, so when we talk about those ganglia, what are we talking about here? So the ganglia, remember, are those collections of cell bodies outside of the central nervous system, meaning in the peripheral nervous system. And we're going to have 3 different types of ganglia in the sympathetic division. This is part of that organization. So we're going to have what is described as the sympathetic chain. We're going to have what's called the collateral. And we're going to have what's called the adrenal medullae, with the AE ending as the plural form of the word. But I'm going to actually, let's erase that one. And let's put it over here. So put it kind of far away. From the other 2. So notice that I have my sympathetic chain ganglia very close to the spinal cord, and I have my collateral ganglia very close to the spinal cord, but I have my adrenal medullae all the way to the far right of my spinal cord. So that's going to be important. When we talk about the sympathetic chain, we can classify it as also being paravertebral, which means like around the spinal cord. What we're going to see happening, I'm going to draw sort of like I'm just going to draw like a vertical line to represent my brainstem and my spinal cord. And then what I'm going to do is draw sort of like little dots around that spinal cord. So I'm going left and right sides of the spinal cord, and then just kind of connect it. these dots, it's looking maybe like a long beaded necklace surrounding that spinal cord. This is kind of the organization of the sympathetic chain. So it's going to be on the left and the right sides of the spinal cord. And this section of ganglia then are going to communicate with effectors that are located in the head, neck, thorax. And here, thorax is talking about heart, lungs, those organs inside the thoracic cavity. Body wall is talking about skin, muscle, bone. So that's talking about the whole torso. So that's talking not just about the thoracic region, but the body wall, the covering of the abdominopelvic region as well. It's talking about both the front and the back. And then limbs would be another way of saying like upper and lower appendages, or what we commonly think about as legs and arms, right? And so what we're seeing happening is you have on either side of the spinal cord, you have this arrangement of sympathetic ganglia, and then those black ganglionic neurons are coming off of these beads and going out to these different parts of the body. So that's what that's talking about. When we talk about the collateral ganglia, we can call this pre-vertebral if we want. And what we're going to see is it's actually anterior to the spinal cord, so it's in the front. So if I take my black line again and I draw another like vertical line, and then I'm going to take my green and I'm going to actually put like a green dot on front of that black line, and I'm going to do 3 of these. We actually have 3 collections of ganglia that are making up the collateral. So we talk about the celiac, we talk about the superior mesenteric, and then we talk about the inferior mesenteric. And so if you wanted to put your hand on your abdomen, kind of like right below your thoracic cavity, so kind of like at the base of where your ribs are, in this area where your liver and your stomach and pancreas are all located, that would be that celiac region. And then if you move your hand just a little bit, so it's maybe like right above your belly button region, then maybe this is the superior mesenteric. So this is mostly like small intestine. And then if you take your hand, so it's in that pelvic region below the belly button, then that would be where the inferior mesenteric would be servicing those effectors. And so in this case of the collateral, we're doing the effectors that are in the abdominal pelvic cavity. And so this is specifically the viscera, the organs. So here we're talking about the digestive organs, we're talking about the urinary organs, we're talking about reproductive organs, and so forth, right? So very much like our guts, right? Okay. And then remember, I have this third ganglia that's kind of to the side. And here I've got it listed as adrenal medullae. Now, just kind of as a side note, I'm going to get kind of maybe like I'm going to use orange because I don't have a quickie brown, and I'm going to draw a little like I'm going to draw like a little kidney underneath here. So think of like a kidney shaped structure maybe. So that's my kidney. Sitting on top of my kidney, I have a gland called the adrenal gland. The adrenal gland has a outside like a bark and an inside like that deep part of the gland. And so like the outer portion of a gland is called cortex and the inner portion is called medulla. So when we say adrenal medullae, we're plural because you have 2 kidneys and 2 adrenal glands, one on each side of the body. So adrenal medullae, we're talking about inside the adrenal gland. And so what we're going to see happening is this preganglionic neuron is short, except for the one that actually goes to the adrenal medullae. And what we'll see then is it's extending all the way out to inside the adrenal gland. And then we said that the ganglionic neuron fibers were long, except for in the adrenal medullae, which we'll see like that cell is actually just like located right inside the adrenal medullae. And this is what is super important. The adrenal medullae is going to release, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce our two neurotransmitters that we're dealing with here as epinephrine, which we can abbreviate as capital E, and norepinephrine, which we can abbreviate as capital N, capital E. And what we see here is that these neurotransmitters are released into the bloodstream, not at a synapse. And so by definition, if a chemical messenger is released into the bloodstream, it's classified as a hormone. So not only do we get epinephrine and norepinephrine released at our synapses, but we also get it released here as hormones. Okay, y'all, you're humans, you've experienced this before. You know, for me, when I'm driving down the interstate, I'm going along, and then on occasion I look up and I realize the traffic is slowing down ahead of me, and I'm like, oh crud, and I hit my brake, right? And so all of the signaling that gets me to react in that quick moment is coming from sympathetic nervous system, right? So that's at my synapses that control to get my foot on the brake. But then I'm sitting there like, I'm all worked up. I'm all still feeling like my heart is racing and all of that. And I'm like, I can't believe that just happened. Like, I'm so glad I'm safe, but I'm still, heart is pumping. I'm still feeling that rush. And I might be feeling that for maybe 5-10 minutes, depending on the situation, right? And so the reason for that is because you had the quick signaling that's happening at your synapses, and then you have this more long-term signaling that's happening from this adrenal medullae, where you're getting the epinephrine and the norepinephrine released as hormones. And so then those signals are in the bloodstream. It's a little bit longer lasting and more widespread sort of signaling. We've talked for a while, so I want to actually pause here and pick back up where we left off. So if you're able, stay tuned. If you need to take a short break, take a short break, and I'll see you back here.